What's our time?
0.
Oh,
I'll start us off. Hello, welcome back to Full Circle. We're here for another episode of Courses Closed. I'm going to be recapping the round of 16 and doing some quarterfinals predictions. I'm Dio. Hosting this episode is once again Kay, and also T1G is here
Hi.
for the round of 16 recap.
Thank you so much.
good morning.
Um, yeah, good morning. So we're gonna be recapping, like Dio said, Course Ace Closed 2024. And if you don't know what that is, it's one of the most high-powered 1v1 tournaments that is available, and it's very special because Course Ace invites 16 high-powered individuals for that. And yeah, we're gonna go straight into the round of 16 recap.
Yes, we are.
First match up, we're gonna be talking about unfortunately last week we had the very infamous most roads, not all roads, but most roads
Most.
lead to 6-2. We're gonna be talking about Malisheski versus Window Life because first off, because we had all predicted pretty handedly that it would be going 6-0. Malashevsky, known to be this insane tournament player, extreme prowess in all fields, and Window Life managed to take 2 points off of him.
Yeah, this one kind of vacillated wildly between being a really good match and a really one-sided match, which was kind of interesting. You're able to see what Window Life was capable of. He put up a really solid score on the Nomad 5. He put up an FC on Hard Rock 3, a really good, insanely close battle on the DT3. But other than that, it was like just all Malashevsky in the other picks, FCing DT2, FCing Hidden 1, and I think it was maybe the only time Hidden 1 was played all weekend, and then closing it out with an FC on Nomad 4. Like, I don't know. Malashevsky did some crazy things, but shout out to Window Life for a couple of really good performances in this one nonetheless.
Yeah, Window Life actually had generally very good scores all throughout the weekend. If you look at a lot of the particular scores on maps that he did play, sure, the reading picks, obviously, he did not have that great of a time. The alt pick, of course, he did not have that great of a time. But like number 5 out of 12 on the Nomad 5. That was the only time that Hidden One was played all weekend. You're right about that. He top scored the Hard Rock 3. Good DT2 score, good DT3 score. Like all of the maps that he can be strong on, he was generally pretty good. And to be, middle of the pack is to be next to Emre on the DT2. So it's not like a middle of the pack score on that map is bad at all. It's just, you're up against an FC. So there were a lot of good points for Window Life in this match. Obviously, I think everybody expected Malashevsky to just advance pretty easily, and he did. So congrats to him. But yeah, that match was more interesting than I think people were initially giving it credit for. Certainly than I was when I got
Yeah.
put on the match. I was expecting a 6-0 sweep, but nicely played by Window Life.
And I think Window Life is capable of really impressive things. I think once he really fully expands what he's capable of outside of the raw mechanic stuff, I mean, the dude has a really, really high ceiling. So excited to see, what he can take away. And honestly, this match was just like, it's really unfortunate to be the 16 seed. Like somebody had to be the 16 seed. It ended up being him. So you
Yep.
get Malashevsky because a lot of those scores, like he would have had a super close match against darn near anybody else that played this weekend. And we could have seen like a 6-3, 6-4 tiebreaker even against a lot of players with scores like he put up. But unfortunately, Malashevsky.
Yeah, I think the 16th seed was a little bit unlucky, but it is very much it is what it is. I think but with that, we're gonna be moving on to the next match. Another 6-2 Kriller versus Inner Camping, and I think this was another situation like Malashevsky versus Window Life where had these two players gone against anyone else, almost sorry, I take that back. Almost anyone else in the bracket, they would have done significantly better. Like I don't think Intercamming would have gone 6-2 had it not been against Kriller.
This was, I think, one of the matches that we talked about as being possibly like best match of the weekend. I mean, 8 versus 9, you're expecting it to be pretty close. And it was kind of a weird one, right? You start off with Kriller getting the instant break point on the first pick, winning his own first pick on Nomad 6, which is the first time we'd seen it all week. And I think maybe held up. Yeah, it did hold up as the best score of the week by a lot. That was a really sick score. And then Enry came right back, got the break point back, won his own pick to tie it at 2-all. And then it was just all Kriller all the time the rest of the way through. You know, really solid scores, right? He nearly FC'd the Hard Rock 2, nearly FC'd the DT3, Intercamming also nearly FC'd the DT3, and then just pulled away with the Hidden 3 before a pretty close Nomad 3 last pick. This was another one that, yeah, it was 6-2, but a very competitive and compelling 6-2. Several of these picks as well. Very, very close. You know, you're seeing how similarly skilled a lot of these players are, but Kriller just kind of escaping with a couple of close ones and making the most of the entire, back 2/3 of this match.
Yeah, not too much else to say. I think that pretty much covers it. Like,
Sorry, Neil.
there's only so much to say about this match besides there were mostly good scores from both of them, but Kriller was just a leg up through most of the match. So what can you do? But that can take us into the third of 5 6-2 matchups, which is Emre versus Taquito.
I do want to say real quick, shout outs, Kriller just hit 2-digit today. Good job, Kriller.
Oh, really?
Nice.
Yo, congratulations, man.
Yep.
So yeah, Emre versus Taquito. This one, again, another 6-2. There were quite a few of them. It was just trading picks for the first pick, and then there wasn't another Taquito win until the DT2. Actually, Taquito beat Emre on DT, but Emre was just ahead on basically everything else. I'm not sure what happened to Taquito on the last pick of the match because he dropped the D rank 407 misses on Nomad 1, so I'm not quite sure what happened there. Maybe somebody who was watching the match can tell me that. But yeah, Emre was winning on low AR, winning on hard rock, winning on other tech hidden stuff, and finally lost to pick on DT, which is kind of ironic, but it just goes to show that Emre is just as well-rounded as any of the other really good tournament players out there right now.
Yeah, I think the craziest back and forth 2 maps in a row you'll ever see is Emre beating Taquito by 300k on tech hidden and then losing on speed DT. Like, I know Taquito's good at tapping, but like, what is Emre best known for? What is Taquito best known for? Type of situation there. But yeah, I don't know. This was one of the very few matches I unfortunately didn't get to see live, so I kind of watched it through highlights and stuff. And like you said, it was just Emre being that little bit better on the roundedness aspect, in ways that he's really grown into over the last couple of years as a tournament player, and able to win stuff that he maybe wouldn't have, when he was just kind of raw mechanics a couple of years ago before he got, more serious about tournaments. So the development of Emre is unceasing.
Yeah, I think that you just saw the clip of that one match. Yeah, anything can happen in a tournament match, and I think it's a matter of like really locking in. And Taquito did really good for himself, and I think that he should be proud taking 2 points off of Emmerich, who otherwise, had he seeded a little bit better in qualifiers, would have done much better for himself. But we're going to be moving on to the next match, which is going to be MCY4 versus Chone. Yet another 6-2 victory for MCY4, and I believe this is a rematch from last year's close. I'm like 99% sure that these two went against each other in Corsai's Close 2023.
I don't remember, so someone else can fact check that. Maybe. Yeah,
I'm racing.
I'm looking right now, and I'm a big liar. I'm like the fattest liar. MCY4 got eliminated in semis by Zudi in losers bracket, and that went to TB. Okay.
All right.
I'm thinking of someone else. Okay, never mind.
She was lying. Anyway, yeah, this one was kind of similar to the Emre versus Taquito matchup in that, like, it starts off with 1 point for Chone, and then MCY4 takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row before finally giving up the DT3 to Chone and then just closing it out on the Hard Rock 1 next. Anyway, MCY4 also winning on like Nomad 2 at 99.4% FC on that map, which is crazy. You don't normally think of MCY4 as a stamina player, but he's actually been grinding a lot of stamina and flow aim for just the solo leaderboards race recently. And yeah, just a wide variety of picks won for MCY4 on this. Again, anything from the tapping stamina to aim to tech to finger control. The only things he lost were the 2 DT picks. That was it.
Yeah, and the DT1 was even close. I mean, that was like 30K. So MCY4 kind of showing his, decent degree of roundedness. I will say, like, right from the get-go, I thought the Hard Rock 3 was a mispick. I feel like dropping a breakpoint before you get to the second set of bans is like really suboptimal, because you should most likely have 2 picks that are solid. So to lose one of those 2 picks and then to give up a map that you maybe could have won via the second ban seems like a little bit of a failing of pick strategy to me. But I mean, that Hard Rock 3 was close anyway, so it's kind of hard
it was
to say
like
for
50.
sure.
It was less than
Yeah,
50K.
yeah.
So
a little tough, but yeah, MCR4 just showed out in this one, man. The Nomad 3 FC, Hard Rock 3 or Hard Rock 2 near FC, Nomad 2 FC, like, dude is playing really well.
yeah. All right. I think that's. I don't have anything to add.
No, I don't think I
So
have anything to add. You guys.
let's move
Moving
on to
on
the
to
last 6-2.
6-2 number 5.
But it's the last one. This is the last 6-2, so we got that going for us.
Only up from here, surely.
Surely. Clueless.
But yeah, the Caden versus Scroll. This was actually a really interesting matchup for me personally, because I feel like the Caden and Scroll are pretty similar player wise, and to see them go up against each other is kind of interesting, especially because like I think Caden has really shown such like he was like up and coming for a while, and then he did really great things in other tournaments, and to see him on a pool like this, on a stage like this, it's really nice to view. We're gonna ignore that chain miss that you guys just saw in the clip though.
That was the most bizarro world ending to a map I think I've ever seen, dude. Also, that's fixed in laser. Decaden wins that point in laser. Just saying.
True,
Just saying.
actually
Decaden
true,
unironically wins that
true.
point in laser because he doesn't no lock and lose that much score.
Yeah, I don't know. This was a weird match, I will say. I feel like both players played pretty poorly overall in this match. Like, I shouldn't say poorly. I feel like
Not
they
their
didn't
best.
play as well as they
Yeah.
could have. And that's reflected in the stats. These two were both the bottom match costs for the weekend in round of 16, which surprises me a lot because I know both of them are better players than what they were able to show in round of 16. So I would say that this is a match that was very, very close, like lots and lots of very close picks. You look at how close together on the leaderboard these two players were. The biggest difference in placement on any single map is 2 places apart. They were 8 and 9 on the Nomad 2, 9 and 10 on Nomad 3, 8 and 9 on Nomad 4, 4 and 5 on Nomad 6, 7 and 8 on Hidden 3, 7 and 9 on DT1, 5 and 6 on DT2, 6 and 8 on DT3. So like, this is insanely close. They're very, very well matched with each other, and I feel like if both of them were playing at their best, it could have been an even better matchup.
Yeah, it's weird that like they both didn't play great, but this was still intensely close, with all these super close scores. I think it's something like if 100K of score had gone in favor of Scroll instead of Decaden, we're looking at like 5-3 or something the other direction. Yeah. I mean, really, really crazy. Like you said, they obviously didn't have their absolute best, but still managed to put forth one of the more compelling matches in terms of score lines per map of the week.
Yeah, it was a fun one. 2 similar players.
So, with the saga of 6-2s ending, we're going to be moving on to finally some not 6-2 matches, but be careful what you wish for because they weren't necessarily that much better. First off, we have worst HR player 6-1 against a secret box.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, you're playing worst HR player who qualified in as what, number 2? You're kind of expecting to get thrashed a little bit. And I won't say that Secret Box got thrashed because he put up very, very good scores, but certainly getting beaten 6-1 is kind of expected in terms of the scoreline, especially in Course Ace closed. I won't beat too much around the bush, but Course Ace is a tournament that tends to have map pools that prioritize aim control and tech and reading a little bit more than other tournaments do a lot of times. And that goes for both open and close. And that's just a way the tournament's made up, right? So for somebody like worst HR player, that is the absolute best case scenario, right? You're getting a pool that is maybe leaning a little more toward your strengths than some other open rank tournament pools do. So to see him 6-1 this match is not really a big surprise to me. And worst HR player had a lot of very, very good scores with the stuff like 600k on Ryusei Gun, 560k on the Hidden 2. Even on the Nomad 5, still put up 630k. So is improving the speed and stamina also.
Yeah, really, the only thing that surprised me about this match was worst HR player winning a tapping map. The fact that he won Nomad 5 is very
Yeah.
unexpected, but as you said, otherwise, yeah, it's just that this pool was really good for him, and I think we talked about that when we were doing predictions last week. And as you said, like a pool like this, a player like this, it's good for him, and
Yep.
he's able to show that off, and that's really all there is to it. I don't think you can feel bad if you're Secret Box, and I don't think he did feel bad
No,
after this.
no.
I mean, like, you're playing a guy who's super good at some of these very specific maps and who did very well on these super specific maps. It is what it is.
Yeah, I think worst HR player going into this was definitely going to be a favorite over a secret box, whereas a secret box is kind of a wild card from people. And yeah, it is what it is. But we're gonna moving on to our other 6-1 match, which is yet again another Korean player. It's gonna be worst HR player. Sorry, Flying Tuna versus. Oh my God,
Worst
Flying
HR player
Tuna.
The original worst HR player,
Yeah,
Flying Tuna.
Sorry, Flying Tuna versus Ninarek. Yeah, another 6-1, and Tuna, of course, being a returnee for this is, I don't know, like the man just doesn't rest. He performed so well this weekend, or sorry, in that weekend, and he basically got top 8 in on basically on most of the leaderboard, save for the Hard Rock 3. He unfortunately he got the worst score of the weekend at 443k. But number 3 on DT1, he got number 3 on Hidden 2, number 4 on Nomad 5, number 3 on Nomad 3, and number 3 on Nomad 2. Sorry, number 4 on Nomad 3, and number 3 on Nomad 2. He is just absolutely wrecking house.
And even that Hard Rock 3 score that was the worst of the week was he only lost to 2 people. And where like his opponent was only 2 slots above him, is what I'm trying to say. His opponent only beat 2 people, one of them, of course, being him. Sorry, my phrasing is really good, I promise. So that one was still like a 9k score difference, right? Yeah, Tuna, I don't know, man. Like you said, he doesn't rust. He never seems to truly underperform, and he is improving on stuff that I don't know that people necessarily were 100% aware of, or at least like he won the DT1 and he won the DT1, he won the Nomad 2, and he won the Nomad 5 against
Yeah.
Ninarek, who is a tapping player.
Yeah. I mean, I can see the Nomad 2 and the DT1 in particular, because like the Nomad 2 is a lot of flow aim. Nineric, of course, does have very good flow aim, but it's super easy to just chain miss in the middle and drop 500k, which is exactly what happened. And then for the DT1, Tuna's a really good DT aim player. Like a lot of these aim control players end up, using that aim control on just super high BPM aim, which is exactly what Tuna has been farming for a really, really long time. Because if you don't have speed and stamina, you're not farming flow aim, you're not farming the DT speed, so just farm DT aim. But turns out he can also play DT speed because, well, maybe the Nomad speed at least, because he did win the Nomad 5 by 130k. So yeah, there were DT bans thrown out at Generic, but they didn't really end up mattering because the other tapping maps that were left up all went in the way of Tuna anyway. So it was just again a very good match for Tuna. Nanera O2 last year. I'm hoping for him to do better this year because I think last year he had a generally good performance despite going O2. So I'm hoping he can put up something a little better this year. It's gonna be a rough
Yeah.
run, but still.
I think he's gonna do great. And we'll talk about his matchup later this week. But we're gonna be wrapping up the last match of the weekend, which was our only sweep. I genuinely thought this was gonna be a little bit closer. It was Enry versus Zudinator, and we swept her. And Enry, by the way, performed second overall on um for performance this week. He got number 1 on No Mod 1, number 1 on No Mod 5, number 1 on DT1, and his only quote unquote bad score was number 6 on Hard Rock 2. He had gotten either number 1 or number 2 on basically every other map that he had played that weekend. And what a performance from him, especially against someone like Zudinator.
Yeah, this match was just Enry being really good. He was
Yeah, and
top. He
Zudi
was
didn't
top.
even perform bad.
Yeah, he was there was the number 6 on Hard Rock 2 where he still actually beat Zudi. Did still have a better score on Hard Rock 2, and then number 3 on Nomad 4. Every other score was either number 1 or 2 for the weekend for Enry throughout the entire match. He top scored 3 of 6 maps that he played in this match and was top 3 on 5 of 6 maps. So this was kind of unwinnable, not gonna lie. Zudi was number 2 on Nomad 1. That was a double FC. So you FC with 99.7, you expect to win that map like 99% of the time. Tr- Unfortunately, her opponent FC with 99.86% AC, so was just better. Like this was a very, very hard matchup to win for Zudi, unfortunately. I think in large part because Enry is also a very good hidden player. Enry is better on speed. Enry apparently is also just as good at aim as Zudinator now with the Nomad 1 FC. Like I didn't expect that, I'm gonna be honest. So I don't know, just seems like a very bad matchup in particular for Zudi.
It's a really sad state of affairs for Zudi in tournaments because there are these people ahead of her that are just a bad matchup for her, like universally. Like Enry's a bad matchup for her, Malisheski's a bad matchup for her, Emre is a bad matchup for her. Like it doesn't feel I know they're all like just really good, right? But it doesn't feel like she has a way in against any of these people anymore, unfortunately. I'm curious to see what she does in the losers bracket. I'm curious to see what she kind of does like going forward in general. Because the level you need to be at to compete for top 4 in these tournaments is so incredibly high now that maintaining it is really, really difficult. And Enry's performance across every skill set they played is kind of just testament to that. That one person can set all of these really different scores in one match. Really says a lot about what people are capable of these days. So Zudi played a good match, and Enry was just so much better that he 6-0'd despite her setting some really good scores. I mean, what can you even do?
Yeah.
I think overall it's just a really, really bad matchup. And unfortunately, it's not even that she played bad, it's just Enry played better. And I think that's going to wrap up our recaps for round of 16. We're going to be moving on to quarterfinals predictions. Brand new set of matches this week. Lots of exciting stuff. And with that, we're going to be introducing 2 more members on our team for votes. We're going to be having Sad Shiba and Vorty joining us for the predictions this week. And
It's a lot
That
of green
screen is
squares.
very
That's
green.
green.
What is up, guys? I'm Screen Shiba. I'm very green.
Screen Shiba, very green.
Shiba.
What is up?
Oh, there you go.
Hey, there we go.
Oh, there we go.
there we
Okay.
go. There
Morty
we go.
in the darkness, as
All right,
we
so
know and love him to be.
Better.
Vorty and Shiba,
Hello,
why don't you go
Vorty.
ahead and introduce yourselves for the stream?
Hello, I'm Shiba. What is up? I look a bit like a mess right now. Please don't think about that. I'm a tournament commentator. I casted OWC. I've casted Course Ace for Oh my god, 3. Oh my god, 3 years now almost since Open. Oh my god, I haven't thought about that. Yeah, I commentate stuff. Hello. I'm usually way more loud and excitable, but yeah, was good.
We got chilled at Shiba today, a rare variant. But yeah, I'm Vordy. I've also done some casting. Might have seen me in OWC last year and some other stuff. But I think this is my first Core States Open as well. So yeah, it's cool to see. Core States
All
closed.
right,
Open
so
was
we're gonna
last
be
year.
going
Yeah,
first
gotcha.
match of the weekend. First match of the weekend is gonna be Window Life versus Intercambing. Get that on the screen, please. That is going to be Saturday, 22 UTC. Oh,
There we go.
there we go. Yeah, Saturday, 22 UTC, and oh man, this is okay. Given his performance against Malisheski, I think Intercambing just straight up banned speed, banned tapping, and hopes for the best on. But they only had a couple of overlapping maps. So Nomad 3, they had overlapping next week, and they both did pretty subpar on it. Number 8 and number 11. Nomad 5 was a little bit of a difference. Like Window Life, obviously, was number 5 on that. And then Nomad 6 was I don't even know
Very
what to go.
intercamping favored.
Yeah, very Nomad 6 was just like
Window
poor
Life-
Window Life.
Like not a reading player.
Yeah,
yet.
poor-
It's
I-
Yeah, he
he's gonna
he
become- it has to
picked that
happen.
he picked that map, by the way.
Really?
And
I didn't
when
even
we
realize.
we saw that happen, we were like, is that real? Is that pick real? I guess
boy.
he had some
Yeah.
300k locals, so the potential is there. But I still don't think you want to be picking reading into some of the other reading players in this tournament. But yeah, that one is obviously very intercamping favored. And then yeah, there's no other overlap until DT3, where of course Window Life was the number 3 score. Intercamping was actually the number 4 score on the map of the weekend.
I just think speed or tapping in general is very, very coin flip, and I personally don't think Intercambing should choose it, given Window Life's prowess. But yeah. Shiva, why don't we start with you? Why don't you predict first?
Oh god. Okay. All right. So I'm not as knowledgeable on stats too deep, to be completely honest, but from what I can see, Intercambing in my mind at least is a bit more well versed on Window Life. Generally, mechanics is something that Window Life definitely can take advantage of, especially the longer this scales. But I still see Intercambing having the potential to match him on some of the mechanics maps. Whether or not he chooses to ban them is a question of itself. Most likely, at least the higher skill ceiling map, so the DT3, DT2 maybe. But outside of that, in my mind, I think Intercambing excels a lot more on multiple things: aim, hard rock, hidden comfort overall. I know Window Life was very brave in going into a gimmick map, but I think that was more just a pipe dream endeavor that he wanted to try and pull off as a gimmick pick, but it just didn't work out. I think Intercambing has good odds on matching him on that. Overall, in my mind, I think this is still much bit one-sided in favor of Intercambing. Obviously, I want a close match. What I want is never the same as what I've been predicting, but in my mind, I am going to probably call Intercambing to be a bit more one-sided in this. I think Intercambing is probably going to win this 6-3, 6-2, in my mind at least. That's my guess so far, because I don't really see a lot of maps where Window Life is able to outshine Intercambing outside of like speed and finger control. Maybe like a doubles heavy ult, but I don't know if that's still present in this week's map pool or not. And if it is and Intercambing's threatened by it, he can just ban it. He's able to match them on speed. Maybe not the rawest of speeds, but like the stamina maps, like the Nomad 5, I still think he's capable. The score discrepancy last week wasn't that crazy, so I think Intercambing is going to take it.
All right, Vordy.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because if I was like predicting this matchup in the first round before we saw them both play, just basing off quality scores, I would 100% be like pretty one-sided towards Intercambing. And although I do think Intercambing has the best chance in this matchup, I do think it's going to be closer just because of their performances. Window Life played, I think, surprisingly well. I mean, he got the number 1 score on Hard Rock 3, 900k, which is pretty wild. Obviously played well on speed, as we probably expect from him, but also a million score on the DT3. That's more of like an aim control, more gimmicky DT3, and he played that really well. He did surprisingly well on some other stuff, but I still think the biggest detriment to Window Life here is going to be his weakness on reading. And although the hidden one last week was relatively higher AR, and he ended up playing it pretty decently, this hidden pool just isn't really friendly to people who aren't very comfortable with hidden. And intercamping is pretty well versed on hidden. I think he's going to have the advantage on every hidden map. He's going to have the advantage on Nomad 6. And there's just a good amount of other more niche skill sets that I think intercamping will have just the edge on. Now, Winter Life will, I think, have the advantage on tapping. So he's at least got 2 tapping picks he can go for, assuming one's banned. And assuming intercamping plays aim better than he did against Kriller, because intercamping is normally pretty solid on aim, and there's a lot of really high BPM aim mechanics maps that he should be able to do pretty well on, assuming he's having a good day. I think I give this to intercamping, but I don't think it's going to be as, one-sided. I think this might go like 6-4 if Window Life can play at the same level as he played against Malisheski. Despite being a qual difference of 8 to 16, I think this definitely has potential to be pretty close.
I'm not. Oh boy. So Window Life has 4, maybe 5 maps, which means a couple of those get banned, which means he has like 2, maybe 3 maps. I feel like it's kind of just as has been said already, right? Intercamming just is a more rounded player and has a pretty, I think, sizable advantage on maps outside of mechanics picks, while also being able to compete on the stuff that isn't like raw tapping anyway. I mean, his DT1 is like probably pretty reasonable, for instance. Yeah, not a lot to add realistically in terms of analysis on this one. I feel that, unfortunately, when you're Window Life, you run to Malisheski, and then you run into the loser of Kriller versus intercamping, and that's just an unfortunate way to go. But I think intercamping takes this. It's probably, I think Window Life does win his picks in all likelihood, as long as he performs to expectations. And he may be able to take a break point on something somewhere. So I think it's reasonably close, but I'm thinking it's intercamping, and it's like a 6-3, 6-4.
Yeah, I think so. Just to run through it, Nomad 2, Nomad 5, DT2 are just purely Window Life picks, and intercamping is probably banning DT2 out of those. If you haven't watched Showcase, DT2 is like, I think it's 3,600 circles and like 27 sliders.
Yeah.
Like that's not an exaggeration. Like it's over 3,000 circles and like 20 something sliders in them. So it's just pure stamina the entire way through with some finger control and other stuff. So that's 100% getting banned. But Window Life can win Nomad 2, Nomad 5. And then you get one more ban. I think the picks after that are best for him are going to be stuff like the Hard Rock 2, the DT1, and the DT3. So you have at least 4 maps after the bans that are reasonably winnable for Window Life. The question is, can you break point on something like a Nomad 1 or a Hard Rock 1 or a Hard Rock 3 against intercamping? Because you're not doing it on the hidden pool, which is probably 1 ban to the hidden pool and then 2 insta picks into hidden or Nomad 6 from intercamping, and then ban out the remaining 1 from Window Life. And then there's still Nomad 3, Nomad 4 available also. I think at some point intercamping is going to have to pick something that's breakpointable, whether that's like the Nomad 1 or the Hard Rock 3 or the Hard Rock 1. So I think a lot of this match comes down to, can you get a good pick for Window Life on one of those more accessible maps for intercamping? And I think this can be close. I actually think this can be close. But I do still probably predict intercamping on this one. I would say like 6-3 or 4. Like I think this is going to be reasonably close once the match is through, or if the match gets through all of the like gimmick picks, like Nomad 3 and 4 and 6, hidden 1, 2, 3. I think once all those are gone from the pool, either through picks or bans, the match can be very, very close. But until it gets to that point, I think we're going to see just kind of one-sided picks back and forth from both of the players.
Yeah. Oh. Okay. So yeah, basically all said and done.
Yeah, I actually quite like this
I
format.
love
We should
Inter.
make me do a
Let's
stat
go.
again.
Let's go Chile. Viva la Chile. Intercamming my vote.
Let's go. Let's go into
All right.
Very,
camming.
very, very simple.
Yeah.
It's
Thank
all been
you.
said. This is what
It's
happens
all
when you
been
go
said. See,
fifth.
this is why I like to go last
Yeah.
because they just, I don't have to be
True.
super unhinged and make weird takes.
True. Put me
Uh,
first. Put me first next time. Then
This
you can be
is
based.
this is how Window Life can still win. No,
The thing is,
It's
Kay, like you
winnable.
can be
Winnable,
even
yeah.
more based after all of our predictions because you can say something that's literally diluted, and that's even more based. Because what if you actually say something that's correct? You know,
well,
without
I did that
realizing.
last
You know?
week. But moving on,
True.
we're gonna be
True.
going to Zudinator versus Nineric, and this is kind of like, okay, so Zudi obviously just banned tapping based off what happened last week, and I think Nineric just banned aim given Zudi's incredible consistency on it. And this is, oh man, this sucks. Like choosing these matchups is absolutely heartbreaking. So that's why I'm not gonna go first. I want to make Dio go first.
oh my goodness,
Oh
he
my
does all
God.
that
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then makes somebody else go.
Hey,
Yeah,
dude, listen
mean-
to this woman, bro. Oh my god.
So here's the weird thing is in qualifiers, Nineric was better on stuff like Nomad 3 and Nomad 4. Obviously you're gonna favor Zudi on hidden, but Hard Rock can be a toss-up, Nomad can be a toss-up, DT is Nineric favored. I don't actually know how to predict this. Just going down the pool, I almost see kind of the same like distribution of picks. Like Zudi's going to want to pick the hiddens. She's going to be a little better on some of the hard rocks than Nineric, but stuff like the Nomad 3, Nomad 4 is less Zudi favored in this matchup. I feel like this is again like a 6-3, 6-4 in favor of Zudi because this is almost the exact same matchup that we just had, except Zudi is more of a hidden player, less of a hard rock player. So the hard rock, because it's hard rock only and not hidden hard rock, obviously Zudi's a very good hidden hard rock player. I think the hard rock only picks are maybe a little further in favor of Nineric here, but Nineric famously is far more focused on flow aim and other stuff than the hard rock aim in particular. So stuff like the hard rock 3 can be good for him, but maybe not the hard rock 1, hard rock 2. I still feel like this is a 6-3 or 6-4 in favor of Zudi just because she has access to better scores on a wider variety of picks in the pool than Nineric does. But certainly there are going to be points taken by Nineric on some of the speedier maps. I feel like it's also possible that we see Zudi just double tap her way to a win on Nomad 5, by the way. That's entirely possible in this matchup. But assuming that doesn't happen, 6-3, 6-4 for Zudi.
Yeah, this definitely feels a lot like the previous matchup in several ways. Tapping player versus pretty rounded, not super tapping player. Like they had, how many maps did they overlap on last week? 1, 2, 3, and Nineric won 2 of them, but it's like those were him maps anyway. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna kind of go with Dio here. That was basically the way I was looking at this match as well. Zudi has access to more picks across a wider spectrum of skill sets, generally speaking, than Nineric does. He ideally should win all of the tapping stuff that he's allowed to pick, and she ideally should win most other things, hidden stuff, aim stuff especially. And I think that advantages her pretty well. I think this is a pool where there's adequate tapping, but only to get so far in a match, and then you do need to branch out. And I don't know that it feels like we've seen quite enough of that from Nineric. Now, he could prove me wrong, but I think at this point, I would be just more in favor of Zudi on the stuff that isn't the raw tapping mechanics. And there's definitely enough of that in the pool for her to win this. I think this is another close one. I think this is something like a 6-4 or so, but I think Zudi wins it in the end.
Yeah, I think it's also a case where in qualies they're pretty close. Zudanita getting 13, but to be honest, I think on a lot of those skill sets, I just assumed that she wasn't really fully like online that day. The systems weren't all firing, especially on stuff like getting 16th overall on the the CS 6.5 map is just crazy, and she did play it a lot better in the round of 16 itself, and I think outperformed. I didn't outperform because Ninarek didn't play that map as well, but played it pretty decently. Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree. I think Ninarek has two very, very good picks in the tapping. Maybe Zudinata can bust out some double tap shenanigans, but probably won't happen. I would still definitely favor Ninarek on the tapping maps. After that, though, I think Zudinata is favored on all of the hiddens, all of the raw aim maps, which there's a good few, other than DT1, of course. And then I think she's going to be favored on stuff like Nomad 4, probably Nomad 6. I don't think either player is like a super reading player, but I think Zudinator is going to be a bit more comfortable on something like the Nomad 6 than Enric. So yeah, I think overall Zudinator has a little bit more depth, and I think it's going to help her in this matchup. And assuming obviously she plays better than she did in qualies on the skill sets that weren't aim, which I think will happen because she already showed that in the round of 16. So I'm going to give like a 6-4 to Zudi.
I mean, look, this is really difficult to compare in terms of last week's matchups because I personally believe that both these guys underperformed pretty tremendously last week. I think both of them could have done a lot better in this match. And there were also a lot of moments where Zuri did do good and Enry was just better, but there were also quite a few maps that I think Zuri had a bit more openings to punish. And that's the only thing I can really compare where, you know, for me, Zuri did good, but had moments where she slipped up when she didn't really need to. On top of that, Emre was playing well. But for Nenarek, I love both these players, but I'm looking at Nenarek and I see more underperformance than Zuri, and that has to do with form. And I'm comparing the skill sets with the pulls on top of that. And yeah, of course, the obvious statement is that Zuri has a lot of depth. But what Dio said earlier, I kind of agree with in essence that Nenarek, yeah, obviously he's the favorite to be speed, and yeah, obviously Zuri's going to ban it. But Nenarek is not a slouch generally on aim, and recently ult as well. Qualifiers proved that for a little while, so I think maps like Deconstruction Star and No Mod 4 aren't maps that aren't going to be as guaranteed as I think some people might assume. But I'm looking at maps like generally hidden one, all of the hiddens first and foremost, and the No Mod. I don't know. I mean, this is so difficult because I'm thinking about it and like on paper I put Zuri all the way, but this is too difficult. I think I'm gonna go with a similar thing that Dio said, where probably 6-4 Zuri. If the forms remain the same as last week, then definitely Zuri. Probably more like 6-1, 6-2. But if we're talking strictly on paper, I think Ninerik's improved quite a bit. And I think he's going to be a bit more of a threat on some of the maps than people think. So I'm thinking on paper, Zuri 6-4, assuming the forms are the same, Zuri 6-2. So regardless, I think Zuri's going to take it. She's much more experienced, much more well-rounded, even if Ninerik has improved. I think she's going to be able to take it. Yeah, that's my call.
Will K have a prediction?
Will K have a prediction? Or is
K
she
is going to
riffing?
say
All
that
right,
Ninerik will
this
win
is how
6-4.
Nineric can win.
Oh boy, here we go.
This is how
Yeah.
Nineric
Here
can
we go.
win.
I'm
Okay,
ready.
okay. I'm like, the evil Pepe hands, like that's I'm right that right now. If I actually have my
You're
camera.
mega lol right now. You're mega lol.
Yeah. This is how Nineric can win. Zudi doesn't ban the speed maps, and he just speed abuses her. And no, I'm kidding, but yeah,
So-
it's really tough because Nineric went 0-2
Some kind of
last year, and yeah, he ended up getting knocked out of the tournament on tiebreaker. Meanwhile, Zudi got knocked out in semifinals. But somebody has to go 0-2. That's just the name of the game here. And unfortunately, I think it's gonna be Nineric. I still think that he performed, better than last year. But yeah. Sorry. Man, I hate this. I hate predicting. So
Like,
Zudinator versus Nineric.
you gotta throw away your conscience for this kind of stuff because
Yeah, you gotta be heartless, bro.
listen,
Like this is where
absolutely
friendships
love
die. It's like Monopoly.
yeah, I absolutely love both of these players like so much. It does
Yeah.
hurt for me to predict
Yep.
against players that I actually really like and get along with and want to succeed. That's like the harsh thing with predictions is that what you want
this is
is
like
not what you
asking
think.
to throw
you
away
know?
like which of your 12 like this is like choosing 12 of your favorite puppies out of 16 puppies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, how do you realistically
it's like
Well, speaking
like
of which,
round of
let's move on to
16,
the next set to toss out the window down the highway here.
Go next, man.
Yeah, next
Okay, this
matchup
is
is
way cooler.
a Secret Box versus Taquito. Let's see it.
Who's gonna go first?
I can start on this one.
Vorty
Okay.
gets
Vorty gets it. Vorty gets dibs.
I get prior because Box is playing. All right. So, yeah, I think obviously for the last prediction in Box's match, me and Kay picked Box, probably out of great bias, but this time it's actually not biased. I actually do think Box played really well against worst HR player, getting 8th overall on the weekend, right behind worst HR player on average scores. Had a lot of good performances where he lost the map just because he was playing against worst HR player, but like 500 plus K on Nomad 3 and Nomad 4, did really well on the Nomad 2. I think that's the second best score of the week, just missing on the ending. Playing the Nomad 5 pretty solid, I think just missing on the aim. Really solid on the Hard Rocks. I think and meanwhile Taquito on the other hand, I think had a pretty rough match in terms of the tilt level. I think there was the moment in the ending where he just stopped playing the Nomad 1, and I don't think he was in the best headspace. And if that continues to hold true, Box is great mental, playing really well. Taquito maybe isn't on his A game. I think Box and just considering the scores, I mean Box I think just played really well. I think Box has the advantage on the Hard Rocks. I think he, assuming he plays like he did again, can win a lot of the gimmickier maps. Even though I think Hidden overall is favored to Taquito, he wasn't too far behind on the Hidden 2, and I think something like Hidden 3, Box is pretty good at polyrhythm. Wouldn't be too bad for him. So, and then I think the tapping maps overall, I think I favor it. This is tough because I don't know the full extent of Taquito's late game speed. But I do think Box is going to be able to play something like Bleachy 2 pretty well, and potentially even Nomad 5, and the Nomad 2 he's favored on. So I think overall, Box has just a bit more in this pool. Now, I'm going to assume that Taquito plays this match with like a lower tilt level, and I think he'll still be able to do really well. And I do think this is going to be one of the closest matchups of the weekend, potentially, assuming both players are playing really well. But I'm going to give Box 6-4.
You know what? I'm gonna hop on that train because I think Nate has done tremendous for himself, and I think that he will continue to do tremendous for himself. So I'm also gonna predict 6-4, a Secret Box. Alright, Dio, why don't you go next?
Sure.
on, Dio.
Yeah, I'm going Taquito here.
Ooh.
I think you are all underestimating just how good Taquito DT is. And that is going to be the reason why Taquito wins. He is already advantaged on the hidden pool. He was number 2 on both the DT1 and DT2 last week. Just for a reminder, he beat Emrek on both of the DTs last week. He was ahead of 8 other players in the tournament on DT1 and had a better score than speed players such as Emrek and Window Life on the DT2 last week. Like, this guy's not you can't speed abuse Taquito anymore. That's just not a thing that you can actually do anymore.
I don't know when you ever could.
I mean, at one point you could, like a very long time ago. It's been a couple of years now.
Yeah,
it's been several years now. And I think people still don't really get that. They don't get that this is not a player you can actually speed abuse anymore. And I think that's going to be the major problem for Box in this matchup is that if you have the hidden pool pretty much completely taken away from you because it's AR9 230 BPM hidden 1 this week, which is incredibly dense, more old style, more favored toward Taquito. You have Rhythm Tech hidden 3, which is absolutely a Taquito map. And then you have AR8 stream flow aim hidden 2, which Box is good at flow aim. Not quite sure about AR8 hidden flow aim. Like all of these picks are very favored toward Taquito, and I think there's a lot of that in this pool. And I think the problem for Box is going to be that you're already starting down a mod pool, and then Taquito can still play Hard Rock and DT pretty well. Like, I think the only really truly free map for Box in this pool is Nomad 2, and Taquito just has more of them. And I feel like that puts so much more pressure on Secret Box to play really, really well on the rest of the pool and on a lot of toss-up maps, which, if you're popping off on the day, absolutely winnable, but that requires you to just be playing better than your opponent. So on the average day, I give this to Taquito more often. I think it's winnable for Box. I don't think it's like an impossible matchup, but I do think this is Taquito favored.
Yeah, I'm very much with Dio on this one. I get that Box is a good player, but I don't know what his approach to this match is actually supposed to be.
That's my issue.
The maps that it feels like he has in his favor in this matchup are very limited. I mean, once you get past like Nomad 2, I guess, like Nomad 5 is kind of just neither of them. Box is a really good stamina player, but not so much. I don't feel like the 270 speed. I don't know that that's quite the same ballpark. And then, as Dio mentioned, like Taquito's very, very solid at DT. Outside of that, Taquito just wins like all of the gimmick in this matchup. He wins like the Nomad gimmick. He wins the entire hidden pool. I'm sorry to say, I don't know what the approach is to the picks and bans in this matchup for Secret Box. I think there are picks that he'll be competitive in. There are picks he can win, but as a holistic thing in terms of a best of 11 match where you have to win 6 picks, or 5 picks and a tiebreaker theoretically, I guess. I don't know what your approach is to that entire thing. And I think Taquito just has a much easier time finding picks that are favored to him, and runs out of picks far slower on this pool. And so I think it's Taquito, and I think it's something like a 6-2, 6-3. Unfortunately, because I love Box, but I don't really see the way into this match in like a way that he can win it.
All right, Shiva.
I mean, all else that I can really add to what Dio and Aaron have said is that outside of Hard Rock, any map that Taquito performs well on, Box either matches or completely falls off on. For example, if we're going to compare to previous matchups, any maps outside of Hard Rock, all that Box was comparable on was Alt and Tech. And Taquito is obviously an exceptional player at that. I know you can't speed abuse Taquito, at least at this level. If we're talking like super high peak, super higher SR, then obviously you can if you are one of the higher echelon players in this tournament. But in general, in a general tournament setting, no, speed is not a matchup you go up against Taquito, and that just makes him much more flexible. All Box can really pick with confidence is number 2, and any of the Hard Rock maps. And even Nomad 2 in and of itself is a little risky because Taquito has got good control. It's just a good thing for Box that he is literally one of the best stream players in the world, in the game, full stop, so that he has in his favor. Outside of that, I think Taquito is definitely much more favorable in this. And although I hope for Box to do well on, stuff like Alt and Tech as a possibility, I think Taquito's quite good in form right now, and I'm looking for Taquito to be the one to take it. I think it's going to be like 6-3.
So
if I was to make a guess, yeah.
We have some mixed views, but you know what, Vorty, you and I are Box supporters to the end.
Dude, I'm rooting for Box to the end, dude. Prove them wrong. Prove the Taquito supporters wrong. You got this.
All right, so get your screenshots hot and ready because we're gonna be moving on to the next match, which is Chone versus Scroll, and I'm going to start this one off. I think I'm just going to pick Chone. I think he is the better of the Russian players. So no explanation because that's not my job. So I'm going to go Chone. Next,
No analysis
Theo.
there.
Yeah, he's just better, guys.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting mismatch. You have Chone, who is very mechanics focused typically as a tournament player, versus Scroll, who is typically more alt focused, more reading focused, a little better on the hidden. I think that the matchup is going to be close, but ultimately a Chone win, specifically because of the Nomad pool. I think that Chone should have a couple more options in the Nomad pool. There's winnable stuff in the Nomad pool. Like Chone is able to win on stuff like the Nomad 3 versus Scroll. We don't typically think of Scroll as a bad alt player at all. He's usually thought of as a very good one, but it is winnable for Chone. And then you have Hard Rock and DT also very Chone favored. Scroll completely avoided the Hard Rock pool in his previous match versus Decaton, which, understandable. You probably don't want to play Hard Rock versus Decaton. But you're definitely not going to want to play it versus Chone either. And I think there are going to be picks in that pool from Chone. So I'm going to say like 6-4 Chone. Like, I think this will be close, but ultimately a Chone win. Plus experience in big tournaments, right? Chone was previously second in Charlie's perfect math class, so that does help here.
Good old level Russian.
I'm
Love that.
I'm gonna be a difference of opinion here, just for fun, because I honestly think this match is about as 50-50 as anything we have this week.
Yep.
And I'm gonna say Scroll because I think Scroll can combo game a bunch of the non-mechanic stuff, especially that Chone isn't as strong on. I think Chone definitely favored on your raw mechanics, definitely like favored on kind of skill cap. But I think Scroll can have really good performances on other stuff, and there's a lot of other stuff in the pool. I think this is super close. If anything was going to go to a tiebreaker this week, there's a couple of those actually, but I could see this being one such match. But I think Scroll can pull it out on some stuff that is not quite as mechanics forward. And I think he is capable of winning this match. And at the end of the day, I think it's going to be a super close one, regardless of who wins.
It is unfortunate that these OWC teammates have to knock each other out
True.
right out the gate in this
Yeah.
tournament. Never happy, when that happens. But I think this is gonna be Chone, but I don't think it's gonna be that close. Mostly just based on their performances. Scrowell had the worst performance of the round of 16, averaging 366k. Chone averaged 528k, like 150k better on average. So I think just based on their current forms, their current playing states, obviously, like, you can just have a bad day and just have a bad sesh and not play as well. And on paper, I think both players will have picks for them, and Squirrel should have some picks that he can go for here. And especially, since Squirrel had a better quality performance. So it could have just been an underperformance from Squirrel on the round of 16. But just basing on their last two matches, I think Chone has the advantage. I do think his speed and mechanics strengths should give him enough. But if Scrowell is playing well on the ult, playing well on the gimmick, he's got a lot of picks. So this could be really close, but I'm going to give it to Chone.
I think although it has potential to be very close, I think I'm leaning towards Chone to be generally the more favorite player. You guys have already explained it very deep, so I'm going to put it in my mind in the most simple way possible. Chone wins on most, if not all, of DT. Chone wins most of, if not all, of Hard Rock. Squirrel wins most of, if not all, of Hidden, and some of No One Is a Gamble. That's two skill sets against one, and the other one's a gamble. The simplest way to compare these things, in my mind at least. So I'm just looking at Chone just generally to be the more favored player. On top of that, his form was pretty decent despite losing, from what I remember. And I'm just going to make it simple because I think everyone's already run down the explanation. Although it has the possibility to be really close, I think there are more odds of Chone winning than the match being close. Let alone Squirrel winning the match, in my opinion. Again, it's such a shame. Yeah, like Vordy said, it's a shame to see the two only Russian players in the tournament to be one of them knocked out this early into it. I was hoping for a more climactic clash or a climb to the top together, but unfortunately it is what it is. So yeah, I'm going to be voting Chone to take this. Probably like 6-4, I'd say. 6-3.
Yeah. All right. So pretty handily on the board. I think it's going to be a close match. Yeah, we might not, but I think Chone comes out of that. But we're going to be moving on to the first of our winners bracket matches. So all of those matches were of the losers bracket. We're going to be moving on to the winners bracket. Malisheski versus Kriller. I love Kriller. I think Kriller's a great player and he did super awesome. I just think Malisheski's better. I
Holy
apologize.
shit, Kriller.
Yeah, Vas. Sorry, but Malisheski. I'll give a couple points to him. I'll give him like 6-2, 6-3. But Malisheski's gonna win. That's my prediction. Shiva, why don't you go next?
I'm so fucking sorry, Kriller, man. I have to just tell the truth, man. Yeah, no, I mean, Ristal. Like, I love Kriller, man. I love this guy so much, but I also love Ristal, and they're both just really good damn players. Like, but Ristal is like on a rampage that we've definitely missed, I think. Last time we saw this level of ridiculous dominance was at MGC, so it's been a good long few months since we've seen Ristal this absurdly ahead of everybody else. And we saw that reflected in his match earlier last week. And although the issue with Kriller is the matchup is really tough. You're an incredible hidden player, you're an incredible well-rounded no-mod player, and you are literally against not only the most well-rounded tournament player, but whose strongest skill sets are hidden and no-mod. It's just an unlucky matchup on top of the fact that you are literally against the player who's favored to win it all at the moment. There's not much else I can say. I'm sure everyone else is going to be much more detailed in their explanations, unless I'm wrong. But I think for me, I really wish it would be close, but I don't see a world where Ristal doesn't win. I don't see that world. I think he's going to win 6-2, 6-3 if Kriller is really on a good run. It's just a matter of Malisheski being too good. There's really no other way to say it in my mind, at least.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, this isn't like a knock on Kriller. Like, he got third overall in the performance score in the round of 16. He had a fantastic match up against Intercamping. He had one of the most absurd scores of the weekend on the reading no mod on the no mod 6, getting over 600k, which that map is cooked, and it's cooked because Malisheski also played it and he got 379k. So Kriller got relatively close to doubling his score on that reading map. So if Kriller is that good on reading, I mean, probably just gets banned, honestly. Number 6 gets banned for Kriller. And then other than that, Malice is just, unfortunately, just too good for Kriller. Like, too good for pretty much anybody in the world right now, other than a few contenders. Malice is just too well-versed in the tapping. He's too well-versed in the hidden, on the hard rocks, just on mechanics. Yeah, unfortunately, there's a case of Kriller's good, but Malisheski is, as Shiba said, probably the favorite right now, at least. But that could change as some of the other players shine in the later stages.
Yeah, I think the way I look at this match, unfortunately, since I saw it, is Malisheski is basically Kriller but better. And that's not intended as any sort of offense at Kriller, because he's really good. But everything that he's good at, Malisheski is also good or as good or better at, pretty much. Kriller's on a super, super strong run. Like you said, played really well last week, is doing really cool things in solo as well. Will set good scores, but the problem is his good scores are just also gonna be probably no better than Malisheski's good scores. I think it's pretty tough for Kriller. I think it's pretty tough for anybody against Malisheski. I would love to see this end up being close. I think there's a world where, if Malisheski underperforms at all, Kriller will be ready to jump on it. But we see him underperform so incredibly rarely. I think it's Malisheski favored. It's something like probably a 6-3 or so in favor of Malisheski, who's just, like you guys have been saying, he's just on the rampage of all time.
Malisheski 6-1. I will not be taking questions.
I mean,
Go next.
that's fair.
Yeah,
That's just
that's fair. Yeah, okay, so I think we're pretty
I-
strongly for Malisheski across the board, and we're going to be moving on to the next winners bracket match. Enry versus Flying Tuna. Flying Tuna, #Korea. I'm totally not biased towards my own countrymen. 6-4, I will not be taking any questions. Next.
Okay, sure. I'll go next. Enry 6-3, 6-3. Enry was number 2 overall last week. Enry is higher seeded than the qualifiers. Enry has been a bigger solo carry tournament player in team tournaments than Flying Tuna, which is a pretty big indicator of how good you can be in 1v1s, generally speaking. comparing their head-to-head scores from last week, it is a 3-0 record for Enry. Comparing their head-to-heads for qualifiers, it is a little Enry favorite. I think 6-4 Enry out of qualifiers. But you have to actually pick in the tournament itself. And I think the big thing is that like Flying Tuna has very good matchups against players who are not as strong on like the aim control in particular, which is why his matchup versus Neneric was really good. But against somebody who is just as good at the aim control or close to it, at least for the purposes of tournament play, against somebody who can do hidden reading, against somebody who has good enough aim to FC Nomad 1 last weekend, and against somebody who can play DT speed better. Yeah, I think Enry just like is better suited for the higher level 1v1s than Flying Tuna is. So yeah, I go Enry here.
Yeah.
Go on. Do you want to go? Sorry, Aaron.
I don't know if we're just going across here or what, but I was just real quick going to pick Enry because like he's top 3 in this tournament. Like I think him up there with Emre and Malisheski. The dude's playing really, really well after the performance last week. I don't know how you could bet against him like in any context in this matchup. And that's all I have to say about that.
And to reiterate the point, I do think it's an unfortunate matchup for Flying Tuna just because this pool is good for him. There's a lot of aim control in this pool. There's a lot of like worst HR player maps in this pool that obviously Flying Tuna like was the pioneer of that skill set in several years ago. But unfortunately, Enry is just also really good at that skill set, and then he's also just an insane speed player and he's got mechanics. So I think this is gonna be a tough one for Tuna. If Tuna has like his best day ever and Enry has an underperformance, he could still win just because he's a really good player. But assuming both players play at a high level, Enry I think is just gonna have more picks and is gonna be able to break point most of Flying Tuna's picks. So yeah, it's gonna go to Enry and then probably like 6-3. I'm gonna say I think Flying Tuna gets some picks here, but yeah, Enry overall for sure.
Yeah, is this another? This feels like another one of those situations that Aaron said it with the last matchup, where it's like two players who are quite similar in style, but one of them is literally just doing better. The similarities aren't as distinct, but still are present there. Not only is Enry in absolutely incredible form, but every skill set that Tuna is most known for, Enry is equally very strong on them. It's just a tough situation for Tuna. You really can't doubt the stats that Enry put up last week. You just can't. The guy's an absolute freak. Like Aaron said, very likely to be favorited for being top 3 in the tournament. You can argue for a case for Forum, but we haven't seen that just too much just yet. Enry does seem to be the one to keep that bronze medal in his hands so far. We never know, that could change in the future, but for now, Enry's looking really, really good, and I don't think it's going to stop. I hope Flying Tuna does make this close, though, because name-wise, this looks like a really, really fun match to watch. I don't think it will be one-sided, but I do think Enry will win it, in my mind.
All right, across the board. Wait, I was supposed to vote Tuna. Cavo
trolling. Cavo just assumed everyone said Enry. Aye.
Okay.
All right, there we
You
go.
know what? There we go. I get to be the one unhinged person. Okay, moving on. Where's HR player versus Emre?
Yippee! Clown matchup.
Yippee! Oh my god, this is so tough because I feel like a lot of people were looking forward to this match, and because this is one of a huge up and coming player, where's HR player who performs super well.
Up and coming,
dude.
Did you just say up and coming?
Sorry, look,
he's well enshrined.
Bro.
Shut up. Look, man, it's been a long day. I need my coffee. But anyways, yeah, for him, he wrecked house in 3WZ. He sets amazing scores that you see on Twitter, and bro is an actual alien on some of these maps. But Emre, long-standing skill cap player, #1 in the world. This is a really tough matchup, and I think if it was a harder pool I think I would give it to Emre, no doubt, because if you're facing skill cap, Emre is your guy, and he proved that last year against Malisheski in Corsai's closed grand finals, and he got the bracket reason and ended up winning the tournament. So skill cap is the name of his game, but I don't know if we've quite reached that level yet where he just outscales worst HR player. So I think because of that, I think worst HR player wins over Emre.
I mean, I'll carry the. I'll make it up next. I mean, yeah, the point you make is good, but looking at these previous stats, worst HR player hasn't been as
Also, isn't
ridiculously
Emre sick
one-sided
this
as I
week, or was that
think
last week?
we hoped. That was qualifiers, no? He wasn't sick
No, he
last
was.
week,
He
was he?
was. I think he was sick last week against
Was
his
he?
mat, and yeah.
Well, he still played. He still played pretty good, despite
Still
having a bit of a
pretty damn
choke
good.
on
Yeah, but
DT1.
it's like playing all six seems like an awful thing.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough on a game like this. Yeah. Um, this is hard, man, because was a chart player, yeah, he is incredible, and he is very clearly very strong on quite a few lots of maps here. The matchup is definitely going to be quite scattered. It's obvious that Forum's going to be abusing hidden, gimmick, and control, mostly on those no mod maps. Emre is going to be abusing those tapping mechanics and general mechanics heavy maps in there. But what makes me think that Where's a Child might take this are the aim maps. I think what Emre does excel on is, of course, skill cap, like mentioned before. And I'm looking at this and thinking, like, yeah, Emre is very, very powerful. But the maps that Emre performed well last week on are also maps that Forum did perform pretty well on, outside of the obvious ones that aren't Forum maps. But Nomod 1, Hard Rock 1, DT1 even are maps that I see Forum being able to perform really well on. Other maps, obviously, like the variety of the Nomod maps outside of Nomod 5, maps that I think are very toss-up outside of Nomod 6. It's difficult. It's difficult to really see how Emre will perform this week. If we're looking purely on paper and based off the maps that we've seen, like it's looking like a worst HR player match in my mind, at least for this round. I think later on it will be more in favor
with
of Emre.
that, nice prediction, Shiba. Dio, would you care to go next, please?
Sure. I'm predicting Emrek, and I'm predicting Emrek because I think Emrek is going to win the tournament. And so I think if he's going to win the tournament, he can probably win this match. There are, like Shiba said, maps that are good for worst HR player in this pool. There's a lot of aim control, of course. There's a couple of really difficult reading picks, but I don't think that's enough because Emrek is also very good on those picks. For example, the Hidden 2 last weekend, worst HR player does have the win head to head, but it's by 14K, and Emrek is number 2 on the map overall for the weekend. Like this, and he's also number 1 on the Hidden 3 from last weekend with 870K. So this is a player who can play these more unconventional picks in the pool and is still able to put up very good scores on all of the other mechanics maps. So I think that it's going to be close. There's going to be a lot of toss-up picks in this matchup because both players are good enough that the vast majority of maps are toss-ups between the two of them. But I do think that it's going to be an MREC win for this match. Mostly because I think if you're defending champ, you do not want to lose a match in quarterfinals.
I'll quickly go next. Yeah, I do think this pool has a lot of good stuff for worst HR player. Lots of aim control, lots of skill sets that he's good on. But especially over like the past year, Emre's just been going on side quests from his usual really high skill cap maps and just FC's Fortissimo, Hidden Hard Rock. Gets number 1 on Breath Obliged. Like he's just gotten so good at what worst HR player is good on that he can definitely upset pretty much any worst HR player pick. Meanwhile, he's 100% going to win the two tapping maps that get remained unbanned. And then overall, I think he's just stronger in the mechanics. So yeah, I think I just can't bet against Emrek in any reasonable case. And the only map he underperformed on was like his best skill set, DT1. And I'm going to presume that's just because he was a bit under the weather, like feeling a bit sick. So assuming he doesn't, he had the potential to get the highest score that weekend. So yeah, I'm going to give it to Emrek. But that's assuming he, is prepared, because a prepared high skill cap, like good day worst HR player on a lot of these aim control picks is going to be very, very scary. So this is going to be a matchup that Emre takes super seriously, but I think assuming he does, I think he takes it.
This is like such an insane matchup. It's really unfortunate. We
You're
have to
the
see this in
tiebreaker,
quarters.
sir.
I don't like being the tiebreaker. I don't want to be the tiebreaker, but I guess I'm just gonna fall back on never betting against the number one player in the world. I think Emre, you just can't bet against him. We've seen what he's capable of on so many different kinds of maps at this point in time, in so many different kinds of matchups against players that ostensibly, quote unquote, should be better than him at certain maps. He still finds ways to win. I think, assuming they're equally prepared and ready to go for this match, I think Emre will have what it takes to win at least one breakpoint on a quote unquote worst HR player map. And I think like that's all that it'll take in this matchup is like one breakpoint or a tiebreaker. I think there's some really good worst HR player maps in this pool. I think he will definitely keep it super competitive because he's the best in the world at that skill set. But I think Emre is well-rounded enough, as we've seen, and has such a high skill cap that he will make it happen, as he has just time and time again. That being said, I think that this is like, if you're going to watch one match this week, or well, it's at 11 UTC, so sorry if you're from the United States, but this is like the match, because it's going to be pretty crazy. But I think Emre takes it.
All right, last match of the weekend is going to be MCY4 versus Caden. Or let's start right to left. So Shiba, why don't you go start us off?
I think it will be tiebreaker MCY465.
That's
Damn.
a hot take. That's
Damn.
a hot take.
Ready. He's in.
All right.
Ready. He's locked in.
I've burned my yapping train, guys. I've burned my yapping train. You guys,
He was
there's my
all
prediction.
for Emre versus worst HR player. That was his moment.
Yeah, I was invested in
Alright.
that one. I think MCY4 wins. There you go.
All right, Vordy, why don't you go next?
I don't think I think it's gonna be MCY4. I don't think it's gonna go to tiebreaker though. Caden had a relatively rough performance. I mean, here's the thing: he won 6-2, but he won 6-2 by getting the 15th overall against the 16th overall player. So I think his 6-2 is a little bit. It's not as strong as it seems. Meanwhile, MCY4, 5th overall, had some insane scores. Number 1 on Nomad 2. I don't know. See, both of these players, I mean, Caden played the DT2, but had a relatively rough time, so I'd probably have to give this speed to MCY4, even though MCY4 isn't really a speed player. And then, other than that, I think MCY4 is going to have a great time on all of the gimmicky aim control maps. I think he's going to be really well advantaged on the Hard Rocks. Even though Caden's good at Hard Rock, I think this type of Hard Rock pool, notably the Hard Rock 2, Hard Rock 3, is in favor of MCY4. And then I think the hiddens he's going to be advantaged on. So yeah, I think MCY4 just has too many picks. And I don't really know what Caden picks here that he's going to be like super strong on. I normally think of Caden as a really good tech player, but he got 350k on Ryusei Gun. MCY4 didn't play it, but I think probably could have played better than that. So we'll see. If Caden shows up, it'll be a closer match. But if we get a repeat of last weekend performances, I think this is going to be pretty one-sided to MCY4.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm going with that too. I think MCY4 is just playing super, super well. He has a lot of different picks that he's looking really strong on. I think there are some points that Caden can and will win in this match, and like most of the other matchups this week, I think it's going to be a pretty competitive one in general. But I think MCY4 finds just the little advantages that he needs based on how well he's playing overall. I think this is another one where I could honestly see this go like 6-2. MCR4 is just playing that well. But I think it's more likely to be something like a 6-4 or so.
Yeah, this matchup's weird. Seed 3 versus 6 in qualifiers, you assume that there's a lot of, kind of back and forth on the picks, and that these players are, relatively evenly matched across the qualifiers pool. MCY4 has the head-to-head advantage on 9 out of the 10 maps played in qualifiers, which is obscene for a 3 seed difference, right? Like that is not normal. Which goes to show that their strengths and weaknesses are pretty much exactly the same, but MCY4 is just better at like all of them. Which makes this matchup, and I'm kind of ignoring round of 16 because I know Caden underperformed round of 16, so I'm not really factoring that in here. but it kind of makes this matchup really hard for Taquito to win because he has to overperform or MCY4 has to just underperform. And there's not really any other way of putting it because both of these players have the pretty much exact same strengths and weaknesses. I think this is winnable for either of them, but I give this to MCY4 like 70-30. 70% of the times they play, I think MCY4 wins. Just because this kind of like look at the quals filter sheet tab right now. This is actually insane. Why is there 9 maps that MCY4 has head-to-head advantage on out of qualifiers?
That's brutal.
I'm actually appalled.
guy.
Like what
actually
happened?
appalled.
That's not normal.
He's so appalled.
I just think
bro.
I'm so
MCY4 just
appalled.
became like Jesus, you know? He took
Yeah.
he took the powers of his other Hong Kong brethren and just said, "Yep, I'm gonna use it for Core 6." You know the GNU Force
Yeah.
from Dragon Ball? That's what happened.
And then like usually you think of Taquito as a good Hard Rock player, but MCY4 was top 2 on all 3 Hard Rock maps last weekend. Like
I think this is another case of like Malisheski versus Kriller of like, the Caden's a great player on his skill set. He's so good. MCY4 though is just better. And for that
Yeah.
reason, I'm going to predict MCY4 winning over Caden 6-3. I am.
All right.
All right. So I think
And that's full
you
that
stop.
got-
settles it.
It's a wrap.
Yeah. It's a wrap, folks. Cabo, please. Okay, thank you. All right, so that's a wrap. This has concluded our weekly recap and predictions. Of course, it closed hot takes, interesting matches, epic streams. Watch this weekend. First match is at Saturday 11 UTC. And once again, if you are not following, hit that follow button so you can get notified when we go live with matches. And we have some great stuff for you. Unfortunately, this weekend we will be saying goodbye to 4 players. It's how the cookie crumbles. But yeah, best of luck to all the participants, and we will see you there. Thank you so much to Cabo for streaming and everybody else for being on this podcast, and we will see you next time.
And if you're a player, no 6-2s. I do
No
not want to see a
6-2s.
single
No
6-2.
No 6-2s.
All tiebreakers.
Let's go.
Yes.